Engaged spirituality. Engaged spirituality. What is it? That idea of remembering and remembering our spiritual practice, remembering the truth of our being when we come to anything and everything in our lives and in our world. That idea that having a spiritual practice, reading spiritual books, knowing spiritual principles, engaging in community is simply not enough. In Unity, we have 5 basic principles, the 5th of which is action. Action is about engaged spirituality and bringing our spiritual practice to everything, not because we're preaching it, not because we're telling shoulds all over, but because it is so ingrained within the fabric of our being. It is how we show up, it is who we are, and that just emanates and radiates to everything that we meet. Now, I was in the grocery store this week, and I had an experience that I've had multiple times in the grocery store. And I almost just didn't do anything about it because it happened so often. I had that feeling of kind of hopeless. Is there anything in the world that you feel a little hopeless about, that it's like, you know what, that's past saving? You know what, they're never going to get it. They're not going to listen. That's not going to get fixed. They're not going to wake up. It's too far gone. Just maybe 1 or 2 things. So one of mine, and now we're going back to the little thing, not to be trite, but it's actually pretty huge. And in fact, it's tied to an almost landmass in the ocean called the plastic island. So one of my little pet peeves, and it's not a little pet peeve, it's actually like a Doberman pinscher, is that when I go to the grocery store, if I don't get the word that I don't need a bag fast enough, because some people are really good at their jobs and they're so fast, and they take whatever it is, you know, in the second I don't need a bag, it's in there, right? And then, has anyone else seen this? What happens? So when they take it out and they say, okay, you don't need a bag, they take it out. Does anyone know what they do? They take the bag off and just throw it away. And I've inquired about this. And some tell me you just really can't get it back on there right in a way that you can get more stuff in, you know, it just really doesn't work. And sometimes, you know, I mean, because I really can't keep my mouth shut, which I'm sure is just a nightmare for everyone around me. But I just go, oh, please, are you going to throw that away? Yes. Well, is there any way you could put it back? Could you, oh, this thing, it doesn't work. Management, there should be some training on that. Like, you know, did you ever hear of the Depression when, like, things, you know, you needed to, like, preserve things and, like, well, things mattered. Like, everything wasn't just garbage and disposable. But, you know, sometimes I get tired of that conversation and tired of being the one, you know, it kind of looks like a hippy dippy or something that's going, hey, let's save the planet one bag at a time. But I just did it. I geared it up. And I say, you know, for your kids, for your grandkids, you know, the plastic island. But it's hard, isn't it? It's hard engaging with our spirituality. Because it is part of my spiritual practice to know that there is one life, and we are stewards and co-creators of that life. We cannot simply expect to throw our trash all over everything, to mistreat and misuse the environment and each other, and for everything to be sunshine and chocolates, can we? We really can't. And so we have to, moment by moment, engage with our spiritual practice. But sometimes it's uncomfortable. And that's a fun little example of how it can be uncomfortable. But we all know sometimes it can be really uncomfortable, can it not? To engage with our spiritual practice in the world. So engaged spirituality. Truly, I think what engaged spirituality is alignment. It's putting our principles into action. Because if we're not aligned, if we don't take Unity's 5th principle and 5th steps, we can think that we're all one as much as we want to. We can believe that there is light within all beings. We can meditate, affirm, and pray. We can engage in the law of mind action, look at our thoughts. But if all of those things, when it comes to action, if we stop short, and we become unconscious because it's uncomfortable to get to our own stuff, to do our own work, and to do that in the world, we sell out and we sell ourselves short. We sell humanity short. We sell the source of our being short. And we are not co-creating that which we are here to have, to do, to be. And each one of us, none of us has it all down, right? But each one of us, if we truly engage from a place of spiritual practice, has a corner on a spiritual market, something that we each need to learn, that we each need to raise the vibration a little higher. And if we would simply pay attention to each other, pray and meditate about things that come to us, we would raise the consciousness in our world and raise the consciousness in each other, not by force, not by might, not by power, but by the presence of Spirit, by the waking up moment by moment to grace, to begin to soften, to recognize that we are truly standing on holy ground, that this planet and this experience with each other is sacred, and that we're here to show up in sacred practice with each other. But sometimes we think things are impossible, that they're unsolvable. And in fact, that very thought, does it not? That very thought begins to create the conditions. Has anyone ever put a limitation on you that they said, they can't do this, they are not that? There was an insurance guy that came to my house this week because I had some hail damage on the roof, or I thought I had some hail damage, or someone told me I should check to see if I had some hail damage. And the beauty is that I do, and I'm getting a new roof. So I'm having this great conversation with the guy that is looking at the roof, and he's talking to me about his daughter and how he's raising his 11-year-old daughter to be this empowered woman, to know that she is whole and complete, and to really be on purpose in her life and be independent and be supported, because he really sees who she is and he wants to make sure to support her future. And so he starts telling me this story. Did anyone check out recently America's Got Talent? He starts telling me this story about a young woman on America's Got Talent who is deaf. If you haven't seen this YouTube, check it out. So she became deaf. She became deaf, and she loved music. And she decided she was not going to stop singing and not going to stop because she was deaf. Seeming impossible, right? Unsolvable. But through a series of, tuning with devices, listening and feeling the vibration, she mastered singing with the supposed limitation of being deaf. And in that act, she turned a seeming limitation into a portal of possibility, not only for all people that are deaf, but for all people, no? So she took something that was an unsolvable, that was a limitation, and this dad was just, happy to see this thing, and he said he got a tear in his eye, and his daughter looked at her, "Dad, are you crying?" And he said to her, "See, there is nothing you can't do. If you put your mind to it, everything you can do. Everything is solvable. You can master it." What a magnificent example of not just having the idea that there is possibility, not just having the idea that things can come to me, that I can demonstrate something, but putting the action to it and standing in that principle where we create action from. Our spiritual practice in unity often so much focuses on the inner work, which is perfect and beautiful, because we know if we don't do our inner work, then the outside can't change, right? But religion, and a lot of times we call unity a spiritual practice, we don't focus so much on it's a religion, because a lot of times in religion there seem to be a lot of rules, no? There seem to be a lot of, I tell you this, don't do that, do this, do that, don't do that, right? And in unity, we believe that everyone is connected and that everyone has within them the innate capacity to access wisdom, not because they pray so hard, but because it's all around them and they are in fact connected to wisdom. They're connected to the source. So you don't need an intermediary. You don't need someone to tell you principles of truth, that in fact, if you engage in a spiritual practice, if you meditate, if you observe the world around you and how the environment works, You will come to these truths. But religion often forms to start to tell us how to operate in the outer. How do we show up? What are the rules? So I don't think unity really has that many rules. But if we look to the master teacher said there are 2 commandments, 2 things above all the rest, and it was to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbor as yourself. So let's just simplify, because unity is about simplifying and just stopping there. Because you know what? I think all of humanity, if they just stopped there, I think the wars of world religions might be over. If we just stopped at love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. Now let's unpack that. Love God with all your heart. You can have the idea that you love God, but what does that really mean? If God is love and God is wisdom and God is divine mind and God is the source of our being, then to love God is to harmonize with that source, to harmonize with that wisdom, to harmonize with that light and with that power. Charles Fillmore called love the great harmonizing faculty, that it is a power in a chakra, it's a center of your being that through meditation you awaken and quicken, and it gives you different perspective. It actually awakens a field within you. So to love God is to love to harmonize with source, or mind, or wisdom. No doubt, if we all take that practice, peace emerges. Because we become in harmony with life itself. And when we become in harmony with life itself, we're in harmony with nature. We're an embodiment of wisdom in action. The second piece is to love your neighbor as yourself. So the neighbor is anyone apparently outside of ourselves. And the master teacher is saying, bring those together. Recognize that you're all one. And if you are harmonized with source, if you are harmonized, and you have that experience within, it is ours to bring that to each other. It is mine to see that within those around me. And when I have harmonized then with those around me, I show up differently. My perception is different. My perspective is different. When we don't do those 2 things, what can happen? We can be pretty judgmental, pretty non-compassionate, pretty wild, crazy little birds on this planet, can't we? Scott Cook had a great quote that we put on the Unity Facebook this week. It was about his experience with judgment and other, that idea of other, and he said he really just kind of gave up on judging because he's had so many experiences with himself in different phases of life with the different thoughts and the different perspectives that have come to him, that he simply recognizes the humanity in all beings and has a bit more compassion and understanding for people that are different from himself, and has really just given up on that judgment. Sig Paulson, in How to Love Your Neighbor, said, "We are discovering that no one has the corner on truth. The truth is a great circle that includes everyone, and each one has some of the love and the life of the infinite within him, regardless of his present state of unfoldment." Regardless of his present state of unfoldment. Can we bring that to ourselves and bring that to each other? We can no longer afford the luxury, and an expensive luxury it was, to believe and feel that we are all right and everyone else is all wrong. Back to the guy at the grocery store, he was fabulous. When I started talking to him about it, he totally got it. And he was like, yeah, you're right, the grandkids. Yeah, you're right. It was good. Don't be scared. But how do we get into alignment? And what are all the steps? And then how does this look differently in the world when we practice engaged spirituality? Well, the principles are that there is one power and one presence. One power and one presence. Not a devil, not an evil entity trying to make you do bad things or trying to kill the world or kill the planet or do anything bad. That in fact, there is only one power and one presence. We may be ignorant of it. We may not be knowing our oneness with it, but that doesn't mean that there is another source or a power generating anything. You can simply look to babies. You can look to life. You can look to an environment. You can look to the healing nature of our being to recognize that life is loving itself into fruition. So the spiritual practice that merges action with that is to ask ourselves, anytime we show up in our world, am I engaging the world like there is some other power? Like there is some other power? Am I selling out my power? Am I exporting power? The second is to know divinity within ourselves and within each other. So how does that change how I might relate to other people? If I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that that is a truth. If anyone has ever seen someone and experienced someone that truly saw you even when you were at your worst and absolutely knew beyond a shadow of a doubt your light, like they were not at all moved or distracted by your ugliness, your fits, your low level of life at the moment. It didn't even faze them. They still knew exactly who you were. There is power in that, amen? There is immense power in that. Are we claiming that power? Are we utilizing that power? Or are we exporting that power? The third principle is the law of mind action. Is my thinking lining up with my vision, my truth, and my desire? Doing an inventory. Is my thinking, is our collective thinking, are we putting action to that thinking? Or are we knowing this idea and continuing to radiate a vibration, radiate a field, radiate a consciousness that is not in line with that practice? One of my favorite things about going to Unity when I was in college was that it was kicking my booty every Sunday. Every Sunday I was like, oh, I'm doing that? It's great to hear that I can change it, but man, the fact that I'm interacting with it, ugh. So I kept coming back over and over again because I got to see what I was doing that I wasn't even aware of that was creating that which I did not want in my life. So I could fine-tune things so that my perception and my perspective was different. The next is what I call the MAP: meditation, affirmation, and prayer. That action that it really takes meditating, it really takes affirming, it really takes praying. That we are like a little computer, and if left to the side to go get viruses, if you've heard some of those stories of what happens on people's phones, on people's computers when they get stuff going on, not good. Could take you down crazy roads. Does someone else have the power to program my computer, my system? Or am I going directly to source? Am I checking everything with the core of my being? And that action, am I doing the physical work? Am I demonstrating it? Am I acting, believing, and showing up as if all of these principles are true? Really take a radical look at myself. Am I acting, believing, thinking, and showing up as if all of these principles are true? And we can ask ourselves that in every moment. Michael Beckwith, the leader of Agape and the leader of AG&T, part of this new thought network we have of spiritual communities that believe in divinity within, that believe that there is only love, that believe in humanity rising. He says this, I believe that you are great, that there is something magnificent about you, regardless of what has happened to you in your life, regardless of how young or old you think you might be. The moment you begin to think properly, this something that's within you, this power within you that's greater than the world, it will begin to emerge. It will take over your life. It will feed you, it will clothe you, it will guide you, protect you, direct you, sustain your very existence if you let it. Eric Butterworth says, you are vibration. How are we vibrating if we are vibration? He says, unless you want to perpetuate the conditions around you, you must change your thoughts about them. Unless you want to perpetuate the conditions around you, you must change your thoughts about them. There's an invitation for the week. Is there a condition that I don't want to perpetuate? And what is my thought about that condition? And where is my leeway in my ability to change my thoughts about it? Eric Butterworth says, there is a great need in the world today for a religion that is practical and livable. We need a philosophy that leads us to a sense of unity with the infinite and with the infinite number of human personalities with whom we live and do business. We need a concept that leads to the release of our innate potential for wholeness of mind and body, serenity and spirit, happy and prosperous living, and for the creative fulfillment of the persons we are intended to become. Actually, we need go no further than the teachings of Jesus, but we must go further with these teachings. Many persons have gotten caught up in the worship of the man Jesus. Some Christian sects have emphasized the divinity of Jesus, while Jesus himself taught the divinity of man. He clearly demonstrated that the power of God is limitless, the power of source is limitless, and he taught that man is endowed with this power, by which he can do all things. Jesus clearly distinguished between God power and the power of the human. We are here to activate and actualize our God power, no? So how does this look differently when we show up in the world? How does it look differently when we serve? It looks differently because it's about being a contributor and a collaborator, not a conqueror or a controller. We are never doing something to save someone or something because we know in truth everybody is already whole, is already born blessed, is already absolutely perfect. And everyone has within themselves the capacity to awaken themselves. We're not looking down on others. That's how engaged spirituality from a New Thought perspective looks. We're not looking down on others or putting ourselves above others, even when we're helping, because we recognize that different sets of circumstances, environments, and ideas and thoughts, we recognize in a moment there can be a reversal of circumstances. So we show up with compassion, and we show up knowing the divine within. We are not creating dependency. Not in self, not in the individual, not in a system. That in fact, when we serve, rather than creating dependency, we are looking to serve from a place where we are supporting, where we are lifting, where we are empowering, where we are co-creating, when we are teaching. Versus enabling, which creates dependency, keeping one down. Keeping one down. And we are striving in our service to each other and to the world, we're striving to become obsolete. Like a good parent, we are striving to be out of a job. If we have a nonprofit, we're striving to close it because it's not needed. So can we step into alignment? Can we give life a holistic approach and not leave our spirituality parked at the door? If this thought or this message disturbs you, that you maybe thought, well, I thought that just knowing that there's one power and one presence was enough, that should just do it. I thought that just praying was enough, that should just do it. I thought that just if I just got the law of mind action, that was enough. That would just harmonize everything in my life and help me do my work out here. If we thought any of those things, we're falling short. Because it takes all of those principles raising into activity to demonstrate that which we're looking to and demonstrate. All of these principles. And we are here to be that change in the world. We are here to activate it from the soul out. And that happens when we know that it is not enough to know these truths. It is ours to act. Namaste.